tried to work with a group of blind and retarded children, actually right up here in Oklahoma. Now, these children have been blind since birth, being deprived of the strongest part of the memory, the human eyesight. We probably equate to like a camera. All they had access to really were their ears, which is like maybe a VHS recorder. But they had what we call about a 15% teachability index. Now, about 19 years ago, I was kind of like you are today. I took an early retirement package from the oil and gas industry, and I was at my stockbroker's office trying to reinvest that golden handshake they gave me when I took the retirement. And my broker said, hey, we have a memory presentation. You think about doing some more college work, you might want to sit through it. And I thought, man, anything to help me out. I had such a terrible memory. But I was a doubting Thomas. I'd been through that Dale Carnegie program years ago, where they tell you if you meet someone named Mary, try to associate something you remember Mary by. And you say, oh, that's easy. Mary had a little lamb, because you remember that childhood story. And you call her Mary today, 2 or 3 weeks from now you see her, you call her Mary. 6 months from now you see her, you call her Mrs. Lamb, So I knew that system didn't work for me. But I was a doubting Thomas. And when the speaker started talking about the blind and retarded children, he said they had a teachability index of about 15%. Now, back then, there was so much terminology as there is today. But if I were to ask any of you today what the most important ingredient of all learning is, you'd probably say desire, or paying attention, or listening. But really, it's the memory. If you had to pick up something in a meeting like this today, you had to go out and apply it Saturday or Sunday or Monday, and you couldn't remember it, chances are you wouldn't have learned it. Now, these children today be labeled learning challenge in our process, but basically they were unteachable. But the 4 owners had a chance to work with them for a little over 23 hours. And after 23 hours, they went from like a 15% teachability index like this to well above 90%. Well, they were excited, the parents, administrators, the doctor, you about imagine. But our company knew for the first time there's something, a little bit of a change that could bring it to the business world. So that's kind of where we are, and that's where we came from. And I always tell the story when I get to come out, and I don't get to come out as much as I used to, because I mostly do most of our contract negotiations for our in-house programs for corporations like Texas Instruments, AT&T, Xerox, companies like that. But sometimes a local speaker gets double booked, so I get to come out and play. But I tell the story really for 2 reasons. Number one, I think it's a neat story. But the second reason is most people I've met over the past 19 years have the same questions I had almost 19 years ago. And that is, why can't I remember where I parked my car at the Galleria Mall, or where I put my file folder, or that cell phone. But the good news is you all have perfect memories. The only difference is some are trained and some are untrained. But you know how it is. You're at your favorite restaurant trying to forget about work, and all of a sudden someone says, gosh, how you doing? And you say, oh my gosh, what's that guy's name? I remember, the project I worked on him, or the stuff I sold him last month or 2 years ago, but you can't remember his name to save your life. And you do something like I used to before I got into memory training, like I was coy and created the idea and say something like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to misspell that last name. Could you spell it for me, please? Hoping it would jog your memory for the first name, right? And what do they say? Smith, Jones, Brown, one of those hard one-syllable names doesn't help a bit. But I promise you, if you couldn't remember the name that night, maybe at the restaurant, couldn't introduce your family or friends, on the way home that night from the restaurant, or back into your office the next day, a little voice in the back of your mind says, hey, you want that name now? And it comes right back to you. Or you meet someone, you shake their hand, you tell them your name, they tell you their name, and no sooner than the handshake breaks. Oh my gosh, where'd it go? Did it float off into the sky? Has it ever happened to you? Be honest. Let me see a show of hands. Come on, anybody drop a name before? Yeah, some of us need 2 hands on that. But there's a good reason for it. Psychologists tell us that our mind is racing ahead so rapidly to think of the next question. What can you do for them? What can they do for you? Anything but concentrating on their name. So it's not that you forget their name. Many times you've never had it locked in. But if you forget someone's name in a social gathering or a party or something like that, it's embarrassing. But if you forget someone's name in a business situation where you're trying to build some business, referral business, or a good relationship on a project, it's much more than embarrassing. It could put you a step behind a pretty competitive market.